Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Thank you so much, Gwen, for coming back for part 2 of our meaning-making kind of episode. So this is a part 1 and part 2, and I was really excited to do part 2 and to talk a little bit more about this, and thinking I was going to have a lot of people write in about what they had been able to do. Because when I think about it, I've interviewed, somewhere between 80 and 90 parents. I've spoken to dozens more, and the things that they have been able to accomplish in their grief honestly blows me away. It's amazing what people are able to do. So I thought that a lot of people would write in, but it turns out not that many did.
Right.
Only like 3 people. And I started thinking about, why is that? Why did no one write in? And then I thought back in time to something that happened to me at my office. This is years ago. So, as many of my listeners know, we fostered a teenager from Guatemala. We took him into our home. At the time, he was on dialysis 3 days a week. He has Alport syndrome. It was super medically complicated. He was a delightful, great kid. He spoke very little English, really, and needed a kidney transplant. So we got him all arranged. I mean, my church helped out. We supported him. I had to give him a special diet, obviously. We got him through the whole process to get a kidney transplant, got him the kidney transplant. I mean, we got him in April and he was transplanted already by June. And he's continued to stay in my house. And in fact, only moved out this week. So he's been here now 5 years and finally has moved out and is doing very, very well. So anyway, it was a lot, right? And I was at the time seeing a family in my office, and they had fostered a special needs child who had, I think, heart things and all sorts of complicated stuff going on. And I came out of the room and I said, wow, I can't believe they did that. I would never be able to do that. And the nurses in the room looked at me like I was crazy and said, Marcy, you are doing that. And I thought about it for a second and I was like, okay. And then I said, oh no, but this kid is way younger and this kid has so much other stuff and mine's a teenager. And I came up with all sorts of reasons why what we did was much less impressive than what that woman did. And I started thinking, that's what happened. All of these listeners who have done these amazing, wonderful things don't see it that way.
Right.
They just think I'm just living my kind of normal life, and nothing that I have done is impressive. And in fact, they feel kind of cruddy about what they've done because life is hard after you lose a child. So you certainly don't feel proud of your accomplishments. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And you said to me, and you hadn't told me why you thought, so I just listened to your response. I had already formulated my own of why. We only had 3 responses, and they're very similar. But I do think that people don't give themselves, it is our view of ourselves, and we don't give ourselves credit, and we don't put value. Maybe we don't understand, what's the word I'm trying to say, in our helpfulness and our caring to other people. I can imagine that so many of your listeners have extended true compassion, who have done some hard things in their own healing to help someone else, that they don't even realize it, or they don't acknowledge that, wow, that I just stepped out in my own pain and helped somebody else.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
I just don't think you notice it and realize it at all. It's funny because I know if I would go back through, if you were to just pick 10 random guests that I've had on and ask me about them, I am sure that I could come up with one super impressive thing from every single one of them, because there's not a one person that I haven't interviewed that I didn't learn something from. Not one.
Right. Exactly. And I only know a few of your listeners who have contacted me personally. And I can already think of a few moms in greater Chicago area who get together and talk and support each other. And they've grown from 3 to 8. And then there's some moms who have started a knitting group and they knit and talk about their children.
Right. And all these people heard my plea to ask for stories.
Yeah.
And none of them wrote.
But I think they're thinking we're just some moms getting together at the library or the knitting group. And they're not thinking about how they're contributing and supporting and adding, I don't want to say value, but purpose to what has happened to them. It's given them a new purpose, and they're letting a light shine, and they're doing all sorts of things. Also, I know of a group of moms who they've added to the library in their community to better books on how to help bereaved parents, right? That's huge, because another parent is going to walk into that library 10, 20 years from now and find that book that those moms lovingly placed there, right?
Yeah. I mean, without
amazing.
a doubt, they just are doing so much more than I think people give themselves credit for, really.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I am going to read some of these emails, though, because I do want to give credit to the 3 people who wrote in.
Right.
So we're going to start with Chrissy Slate. Chrissy has been on a couple of different times. She's Caleb's mom. And she has started a great blog and website herself and an organization. So I am going to read her email. So it starts like this. I really enjoyed your new podcast with Gwen. The timing was perfect, as I'm in the middle of writing a new blog post titled Growing Through Grief. Your podcast has been a gigantic form of healing for me. When I listened to your first episode just a few short weeks after Caleb died, I was so incredibly relieved that God led me to you and helped me feel less alone in my new world. For the next few weeks, I couldn't get out of bed until I listened to an episode. I needed to hear that mom tell her story about her beloved child who died and give me the push I needed to put my feet on the floor. I thought, if she has done it, then so can I. With no one in my family or friends that knew how I was feeling or what I was going through, your weekly podcast episodes literally got me through the first 6 months after Caleb died. I still listen weekly and have been able to take something away from each mom and dad that has shared their story of their precious child or children and how they survived their very painful loss. About month 6 is when I felt I had a little bit of traction under my feet and could implement some of the strategies and ideas that had been shared by other moms. Week by week and month by month, I have been blessed, strengthened, and comforted by the stories that led me to nearly 22 months since Caleb died. Hearing the stories, listening about the losses, and being encouraged led me to put my pain into something. In August 2020, 1 year after Caleb died, I launched a website, blog, and nonprofit, the Caleb Cares Project. The blog is my release and my way of sharing my grief journey openly, honestly, raw and broken, with the hope that others will read about my journey and see that this pain that once seemed unsurvivable is survivable. I no longer want to die. I no longer hope that I won't wake up the next morning. I no longer hate the sound and feeling of my own breath. Joy is making its appearance more and more in my daily life. I've been able to see that my husband and 2 daughters are worth living for. I know that my daughters desire and deserve to have a loving and happy childhood, just like Caleb had for 17 years. Through your podcast, I learned that they are worth it and they still need me. Since Caleb died, I found my purpose. Through the Caleb Cares Project, Caleb and I still show love to our community and give our time and attentions to children, youth, and families who are in desperation of someone to show that they care about them. Our motto is, you are a big deal around here. The nonprofit is an outreach organization, but it also allows me to share Caleb's story in an effort to encourage parents to start suicide awareness and prevention conversations with their kids at home. Our mission is to benefit children, youth, and families in our community by allowing Caleb's legacy of love and compassion to continue through us. When Caleb died, the community lost someone who cared about people and showed it every day. He was willing to help anyone, anytime, and his motivation for all he did was his life for Jesus and his compassion for people. Our vision is to give, love, and serve genuinely and authentically. Through us, Caleb's hands will still give, his heart will still show love, and his story will save lives. Not only that, but sharing my grief journey through my blog has been able to give me healing as well. Many people reach out to tell me how inspiring I am to them and how my honesty and journey is encouraging them through their painful trial. I think I've rambled on long enough. I love you, and I'm so grateful that Google and God led me to you. Chrissy.
Oh, that is beautiful.
Isn't it?
Absolutely beautiful. And before you read it, I had written a few notes. And one of them was survival is part of what our purpose becomes, right? So she said that so beautifully when she said, joy is making an appearance.
Yes.
In that survival and doing the work of surviving and the painful stuff, that then we get to the joy part. And so that was just beautiful.
And I loved how she said making an appearance, because she didn't just say it's there, right? I mean, she didn't just say joy's back in my life.
Right.
No, it makes an appearance. It comes and goes.
Yeah.
It's not like her life is joyful every day,
right?
But it makes an appearance.
The other part that she said that I had written about sharing our pain, and she even said it, listening to those other moms' stories of sharing their pain helped her get out of bed.
Yes, I know.
And then when we share outside of ourselves, then it helps us too, because we know that in grief, we have to find the words, say the words out loud and find others who will listen to the words. And the podcast has done that. And now these people are going out and doing that in their communities.
She was, I believe, my very first review on Apple Podcast.
Really?
Review. And she put, I couldn't get out of bed in the morning until I listened to one of your episodes. And that meant the world to me. I mean, honestly, that one comment made me think, okay, this is worth it. Because I didn't know for sure, right? I mean, you just put yourself out there. All I knew is that I thought I wanted to listen to a podcast. And then I realized at the time there weren't any podcasts for grieving parents. And then suddenly, like randomly, God puts this thought in my head, like you should start one, which seems so crazy and bizarre to me. And so it was really just going out with a little jump of faith, really, that this was something that I could do and that would be interesting and valuable to other people. And that was the first instance that I knew that it was valuable to someone.
Right.
Was from Chrissy.
The other part of hearing her talk, I thought, wow, her words are so, is she a writer? But then I realized that if a mom's listening to that going, oh, I could never write like that. I didn't hear a writer. What I heard is an expression of our heart. And I think all of us can do that if we take the time to sit down and write it out. I just challenge a listener, what would the expression of your heart sound like? It probably sound as elegant, as inspirational, and as meaningful as what you just read, but they minimize that in their own selves and go, oh, I could never write that. Yeah, your heart has that same stuff.
Well, and it's funny that you say it like that too, because you would not believe the listeners I was going to say the guests that I have on that are like, oh, I don't know though. Your other guests sound so great. I could never sound like that. And I'll be like, no, you really can. I promise. And if you say and a lot, I will edit that out for you and do that. But you're going to sound fine. And what's funny is I just had someone email me who I had on in April, And she had not had the courage to listen to herself until now. Months. It took over 2 months for her to listen. And she said, your editing was great. I sound great. And I thought, I don't think my editing was probably that great. You just sounded great.
Right.
And she said, I think I'm actually going to tell my family and friends about it and really promote it, because it was really great. And of course it was, because it was your beautiful story. And when things come from the heart, which they do come from the heart, from all of my guests, they sound beautiful.
They do. Because you interviewed a personal friend of mine, and after the interview, she called me up and said, I was horrible. She just said, I bombed. I did a horrible job. And I said, I assure you, you did not. And she did not.
No, she didn't. Yeah. Did she still think that after she listened? Or did she not even have the courage to listen?
No, she did. Kind of like your other listener, once she listened, and she probably thought it was all in the editing, but it wasn't. It
really is not a lot of editing, to be honest. Yeah. It's really taking, when people trip over their words or say and or like, or a lot, some of those things are taken out, but for the most part, it's just coming from the heart, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and I even look at what you're doing, Marcy, when you said, you heard, oh, you should start a podcast, and you're like, what? It is that willingness to make that heart connection, that you're behind that microphone, connecting with other parents and just having heart conversations. That, people ask me often, what makes me qualified to help somebody else? What makes you qualified is your willingness to go into those parts of their pain and their story. And that's what makes you helpful. That's why all these people's stories have been so helpful, because they were willing to go there.
Yeah, willing to go there, willing to share a little bit, willing to just put their heart out there and to share their child, which is the most beautiful part of it all. Right? Yeah, the most beautiful part of the whole thing is sharing these wonderful children that we no longer have with us on this earth, but that still can give, valuable things to the world.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I am going to read the second one. The second one is from Laura. Hi, Marcy. I listened to your podcast today, Meaning Making. My son, Luke, died almost 4 years ago on September 6, 2017. Luke was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and had his right knee amputated above the knee 2 years earlier. We spent those 2 years going back and forth from Mason, Michigan, just south of Lansing, to Helen DeVos Children's Hospital, which is here in Grand Rapids, for treatments. Of course, I hate all that cancer, all that cancer took from Luke and me and my family, but I'm grateful for the 2 full years of spending almost all my time with my precious youngest son, who left this world much too soon. There was much I related to in today's podcast. Almost 4 years later, I'm beginning to move forward in this life without my Luke. I don't feel as guilty as I used to, or that it is dishonoring. If I have moments and minutes where I'm not thinking about Luke, I've experienced big losses before Luke and went ahead to heaven. And I know if I allowed myself, I would get to a point where the grief wasn't so all-encompassing and intense. Part of me did not want that to happen. And part of me knew my soul needed to have some reprieve from the deep, constant pain. I've been asking God to help me find my purpose now. I am also a caregiver. Before my mom died 7.5 years ago, I was in the midst of getting my master's of social work. I took time off to care for my mom and then settle her estate in 2014. I had not yet returned to the program when Luke was diagnosed in 2015. I'm not sure if or when I may feel drawn to finish this degree, but I have been pulled towards caring for people's hearts and souls most of my adult life. Like you expressed in the podcast, I am not afraid of the pain of grief that others experience. I am someone drawn towards those who are grieving, just hoping that at least they won't feel so alone. To that end, I'm planning to begin a grief share program at my church this fall. Frankly, I'm not 100% comfortable, but I feel called to minister to others experiencing grief. I don't feel that I'm in a place emotionally, psychologically to create my own group or program. And then she said she thought about contacting you or thought about contacting Starlight just to get some other kinds of help. But she said, still, I'm excited to begin some kind of grief ministry. I thank God for the opportunity and the ways he's created and guided me here. I know if I allow him to, he will make his ministry what he wants it to be. And then she goes on a little bit more to tell me about Luke. And she's going to be a guest on in about a month or so. So you will hear more of Luke's story then. Good. But I just wanted to share that. And I thought that was another really beautiful story of somebody doing something, you know?
And I can't tell you how many support groups or programs at churches or have been introduced to the church because of another person's pain and says, I like Laura said, I don't feel, I'm still unsure about doing it or leading it, but they know it's needed. And that's that introduction, and it's going to be there when somebody else needs it. Right. It's amazing. So, I just want to, I know there's probably not a lot of pastors who listen, but when I speak out, I just want pastors to hear that when somebody comes and says, this program helped me and I want to help others, just listen to that. And it sounds like, obviously her church did listen, and she's able to start this grief share, and people will come and be supported. And it's just a beautiful circle of support. I love it.
Well, and I love too how she said she doesn't feel like she's really psychologically ready, but she's going to do it anyway. And that's kind of like me, right? I felt like, did I feel like really ready to do that? No, I was a mess. I mean, I really, but yet we do it anyway. And we step out on a limb and we do it anyway because our hearts are drawn to help other people.
Well, I think of, if we look at scripture, I mean, God uses all sorts of brokenness and imperfect people. I mean, if we waited till everything was perfect and our life was in order and we had no scars or pains or this or that, we'd never be used.
No. And I certainly am glad that I didn't wait until I felt better, because first of all, I don't think it would have been even as authentic if I would have waited until everything was rosy. I mean, it's honestly why some books that I read on grief don't even resonate with me, because I feel like people are too healed, and I don't like, this is not me. I cannot be like that. Right.
Yeah. They're not messy enough.
Yes,
exactly. I feel that same way. And I remember when I read Rare Bird thinking, oh, finally a really messy, dark, deep,
Yes. That's why I love that. I mean, that's my favorite book.
Oh, I didn't know that. I know.
Sure. Oh, no, it is. It is my absolute favorite. And I love the messiness. And then I had another one, somebody emailed me and asked me for recommendations, and I recommended that book. And it was a dad, and he started reading the book, and he wrote me back and he said, I can't read that book. It's too dark and too messy. And I was like, okay, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
That's what I needed. I needed dark and messy. You don't need dark and messy. That's fine.
Right.
Then you don't take your recommendations from me, because I don't like the rosy ones, but I'll try to find you one that I think's too rosy, maybe. Yeah. So anyway, I just love that. And I thought that was beautiful too. And again, it wasn't something like big and huge. It's just slowly getting some healing and slowly feeling like I have something to offer other people.
Right.
I care for others, and I can offer something to others.
And I have no doubt that people who are going to listen to this are going to hear Laura's, what she just wrote, and go, I can do it too.
Yeah, I can do that.
They're going to. And I'm thrilled about that.
Okay. So now this one is on a totally different note, but I really wanted to read it. So, hello, Marcy. I'd like to be one. Oh, I should say, this is from Debbie. I'd like to be one of the grieving parents who will be a success story for you to highlight someday. Unfortunately, I feel like that will never happen, as all I can see is a heartbroken life without my son, Braden, who died suddenly at age of 24 on February 5th, 2021. Braden had so much left in his life to do in this world. He was so smart and so humble. I try to surround myself with things or people that I want to give me direction, but I remain to be a sinking ship, missing Braden every moment of every day. Honestly, I see no end to the pain, no joy, no progress, no fulfillment. I remain so confused and have so many unanswered questions. Thank you for your podcasts. They always help me hold on. Thank you for having Gwen on. She is so real and helpful. Please don't ever forget to acknowledge parents like me who are spending every day crying, hurting, and maybe not feeling as strong emotionally or spiritually as some of your guests. That helps me know that I am not alone and I am not a failure. So then I'm just going to write you our whole little email exchange. So I wrote her back and I said, thank you for the email. I'm so sorry for the loss of Braden. I know that pain all too well. I appreciate the title of your email because she titled it Holding On. Because so many days, that is all we can do. We are just hanging on and taking one day, 1 hour, 1 minute at a time. With your permission, I would love to read this email out loud for that follow-up episode with Gwen. It is a good reminder that sometimes the good that can come from this tragedy feels completely impossible. That is one of the many reasons that Gwen is so great to have in my own life. On days that I don't believe I will ever see any light in the future, she sees it for me. This is the hope that she gives me. Someday, hopefully, you will see bits of hope for the future. I believe it can happen for you as it has happened for me. For now, though, please be patient with yourself. You are 4 months into this horrible reality. 4 months. That is the blink of an eye. I honestly didn't even start to feel a tiny bit better for at least 6 months. Just keep taking things moment by moment and just know that it will not always feel quite this sharp. Thanks again for reaching out. And then she wrote back and said, oh, I got to find. She wrote back. Said, thank you for your response and the words of encouragement. I appreciate that you didn't say it will be easier or better, or I will be happier later. Your phrase, not quite as sharp, sounds like something I can hope for. And she just talks about how even though it's been 4 months, some days it feels like centuries. And obviously she gave permission for the email to be shared. So,
right.
But anyway, I just thought that was a good jumping off point. And I had somebody else just message a little bit on the same lines, like, I wish I could be that, but I can't. And I can't even see it. I can't even see it.
It is so many beautiful things about what Debbie wrote. And it's so soon and so raw. And, you know, if she's a frequent listener, and now with your on your website, the category of the podcast, you can look at the one we did on the early days and go back and listen to that and know that we know that that's very real. And I believe when we started the episode, we talked about not everyone is here, but her point is so important, because when I led a support group for years, and when I teach others how to lead a support group, I feel the need to tell them that their greatest job is balancing the rawness and that pain, that, wait a minute, I can't see anything but the pain, with the people who are where joy is making an appearance, to go back to Chrissy's words, or I think, to balance those things, because they're seem so opposite.
I know.
It is all part. I'm using my hands a lot. No one can see it. Like that moving in.
Now you have to go to my YouTube channel, Always Andy's Mom YouTube, and then you can see Gwen's hands. But yes.
No, you don't have that, do you?
I do. I told you last time.
Oh no, people are looking at me?
No, people probably aren't looking at you. I think like 3 people have looked at the YouTube channel, but
no, because I said to you, okay. Anyway, next time I promise I'll put on makeup, but I'm glad I didn't put on makeup. And I'll tell you why, because I cried when you read that last one. I cried because I know, and I don't want anyone like Debbie to feel like we are dragging them through going, oh, you're going to be happy, and your words back to her were so beautiful. And then she saw that and heard that, she saw your heart. You weren't saying, oh, don't worry about it, you're going to be happy someday.
Well, that's why I felt like I had to read the entire exchange because it wasn't complete with just her email. I didn't think.
Right.
Yeah, but it was a great reminder to me that in some ways, maybe our last meaning making episode was almost too upbeat in that like it's, and I remember you saying like 90% of people are going to get through this and feel better. And there may be 10% that won't, but the vast majority will. And I don't want to minimize the horribleness.
Right.
And absolutely, that's the last thing I'd want to do is minimize this pain and the horrible feeling that we all have.
Right. But yet I think like in a support group, you have to acknowledge the healing too. And I think at some level, those who are in that pain, they might not know it, but they're getting hope and encouragement from saying, wow, maybe someday I will feel that way. And I think there was some of that in Debbie's, like maybe someday. I'd love to talk to her in a year from now or 2 years from now or whatever, and see where she's at. But it's so, you have to sit in that pain for so long. I mean, it just.
And you have to. And that's, I wish you didn't. I mean, I wish you could shove the pain away and just move on. And I think some people try to. I've talked to some people that have tried that, that just shove it away and think, I'm just going to keep working. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep going through this. And at some point in time, when I go to dig it back out, it will have somehow just shrunk on its own. It won't. It won't. And if you don't go through it and live through it and really experience the pain, you can't get to the healing. You just can't. And I hate that you can't. And I hate that I can't. I was sharing with you before we started recording that I have someone in my life who is now experiencing great loss. And I'm going to be there to try to support that loss. And I so wish that I could take some of it away, but I know I can't. And so what I know I can do is say, I'm here. I'm here for the messiest of the mess. And other people may just give you a casserole and run, but I'm not giving you a casserole and running. I'm just going to be here,
Oh, Marcy, I wrote on the bottom of my page as you were reading Debbie's thing that how this was used today to encourage me. Your words back to her and just that encouragement of some days what I do is exhausting. I mean, it's painful to sit with people in the depths of their pain. I mean, to get up and go, wow, I get to talk to really hurting people today. But it is my calling. It is what I get to do. I do consider it a true privilege in a holy space, but it is exhausting. So hearing these stories and it's just been so encouraging to me.
Well, and probably hearing me say specifically to her that what you do for me. And when I don't believe I can do it, I know you believe I can. And that can some days be enough. It's enough to know that you believe I can do it.
Right.
And sometimes that's all I need and all I have. And that's why I want to give that to Debbie to say, you don't need to believe it today, but I do. I believe that you can and make that be enough. That's going to be enough for today for me to say, Marcy believes I can do it.
Right. And we go back to something we said earlier from the first thing is right now, survival is some of people's greatest jobs. That breathing in and breathing out and getting up and even deciding if you're going to put on pants or put on, brush your hair, just doing that is your greatest job. But when you do that day after day and choose survival, it does go from surviving to thriving. You can look back and go, wow, I made it through and what helped me and I want to help others, or just sharing my story can help others in that survival mode. So I think to just stake your claim in that spot that says, today I am choosing to survive this.
Yes, that's great. I love that. Today I'm choosing to survive that, and just making the decision every day Today I'm doing this. And if today ends up being a really bad day, tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow you can start again. And that's all right.
A really bad day doesn't mean that you didn't survive. You survived it. Like you did the work, that messy stuff, right?
And even it doesn't even have to be a whole day, right? I think about some patients that I've been treating that have eating disorders, and it's so hard. And they oftentimes they even take like, oh, I did really bad this week. And then we're like, well, if you then let's think about it as a day. And now I've not even done it. I told them to throw away the day. We're taking this one meal at a time. We're thinking about it one meal at a time. And you're going to try to do the best that you can do for this meal and not think about the one before or the one to come. Think about this one. And so that's really similar to this in this grief journey. I'm not going to think about tomorrow or even this afternoon or tonight or this morning or what I just did. We're doing this one conversation at a time, 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time. Just because a little bit ago was bad doesn't mean it's ruined the entire thing. Right.
I've never seen it, but because I'm done watching animated films, my children are too old, but I think it's either Frozen 1 or Frozen 2. There's a song called The Next Right Thing. And I have listened to that. And I have used that in some of my family who's going through a difficult time. In that survival is just do the next right thing. Do the next right thing. Do the next right thing. And you keep doing that and they build and build. And then you've got a whole series of good stuff that you've done that you can rest upon.
Well, and just talking about doing hard things, I'm going to have to wrap up here because I told you I'm going to do a hard thing that I have not done since Andy's death. And that is the first time I've gone to a funeral. So it's been obviously almost 3 years now since Andy died. And there was a man in our church that many people may remember, maybe not, that I actually was a singer in the praise band at church, and he was the keyboardist. And I have not gone back to sing, but this man has died now a few months ago. But because of COVID, we have not had a memorial service yet. And it's been weighing on me. Do I go? Do I not go? Do I go? Do I not go? But I really feel like I want to go. And then, of course, at the very end, all the people who have been with him in this praise band over the years are invited to come up and sing a song. And again, do I know if I'm going to sing at the end or not? I do not. I do not know the answer to that question. I know the song well. I certainly could go up, but I may not feel comfortable enough to do this because certainly it's going to be hard. I have not been to a funeral, let alone a funeral in my own church. Since Andy's. So I'm going to try to give myself a little bit of grace. I've got people saving me a seat so I can kind of slide in at the last second, and they love me and support me. And so I am just doing the best I can do and trying to prepare the best I can. So I just want to give that bit of encouragement to people that, you do hard stuff and you do what you can do. And I think I'm going to make it in the church, but I guess I don't know for sure, but I think I will.
Yeah. And I want people to hear that you just said, it's been 3 years. Like, this is not something that you're doing in 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months after, and some people have had to do that and face that. But it's still hard.
It's still hard.
And the other piece is that I do envision that if you go up and your heart leads you there to sing and whatever you feel led to do, you'll probably have tears, right?
Oh,
it'll be
without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that too is a form of worship and praise as well.
Well, thank you so much, Gwen, for joining me and doing this episode, even though it turned out quite a bit different than we had both envisioned, but still,
it was beautiful.
It ended up being exactly what it needed to be.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.